I need this or not.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, no.
Maybe I just do that. How about that? One less thing to hang on to. Appreciate this, Pastor, but I think I'm just going to put it down. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Camera okay? Fantastic. All right. So I'm here to talk about the Gideons. Now, I've been a Gideon since 2010. I became a Gideon because I had this wonderful job. I told several of you about this job where my boss called me the chief whooping boy because I was the escalation handling manager for Intel motherboard customer support worldwide. So I got all the cranky calls. And so my boss one day apologized for the fact that I got yelled at for a living. And I said, well, you pay me pretty well, so you can yell at me anytime. But that all ended. God had a plan for me that I didn't know about. I'm not sure I would have chosen that plan, but he gave me a plan anyway. So I broke my back and became unemployed. And I remember telling the Lord, I said, you know, Lord, you got me into still water. Now what? This is not cool. And so the very next day, the Gideons came to my church, and I signed up right then and there. So I've been a Gideon ever since. So with that, now let's kind of go into this. I'm going to do a Gideon presentation that's a little bit different than you've probably ever seen before. I'm going to talk about what we call the International Scripture Blitzes, where we go into a city, sometimes many cities and towns, and can hand out hundreds of thousands of Bibles and see many, many children in many schools find the Lord. We're going to talk about a few of those today. Well, this is what it's all about. Those boys and girls. I guess those are mostly boys. Well, mostly girls, I guess. Anyway, but boys and girls around the world, men and women, boys and girls. That's what we do this for. You know, we hand them a book, and that's wonderful. But it's what's in the book. That's the important part. Because printing a book and handing them a little piece of paper is no big deal. So I'm going to talk first about Ghana. It's a little tiny place in Africa there, as you can see. And we were going to, had ordered and delivered actually 600,000 Bibles to be distributed in a 2-week period of time. We had a little problem with the local customs. They wouldn't let us have our Bibles until we paid them. We had to play that game. But then they finally got done, and we met this guy. Now, what we do is we go into a little place, usually a school, and we'll give them a gospel message. And then we hand them a Bible. And if you've ever had one of our Bibles, you notice in the back, there's a place to sign your name. And so we'll ask the children, how many people would like to come to know the Lord? And we'll give them the sinner's prayer and tell them, you write your name at the back of the book. Well, this guy was standing there amongst the children, and we were sitting next to him, and we said, well, are you a teacher? Oh, no, I'm not a teacher. Are you a headmaster? Principal? No, I'm not that. Well, if you don't mind asking, sir, who are you? Well, I am the town king, really, I guess, or the leader of the chief. That's what it was. That's right. Thank you, dear. The town chief. And so I'd like to put Bibles in every one of the rooms in my palace. And so we did. And he also asked for a pen. So we gave him a pen. He signed his name. And today that man there is a Gideon. This lady had received a Bible when she was very young in school, and she wore it out. So she was just absolutely over the moon because we gave her a new one. In many of these towns in Africa and other places in the world, that Bible is the only book they have. We actually had a young lady who said, I am the English teacher, and they will read this book because that's the only book they have. Well, now I'm going to move on to Guyana. That's in, well, it's hard to see on that map, but it's in northern South America. And that's sort of an oxymoron of terms, northern South America. At any rate, Uh, and here we have a school. We're handing out the Bibles in this school. And I think of, how poorly the children are dressed these days. And how wonderful these young ladies look in their uniforms. And I know that asking a kid these days to wear a uniform would be tantamount to some guy going to church in a suit. Well, here they are at another school. This one is a middle school. 425 students received their Bible that day. Today, they won't even allow us in the United States to hand out Bibles in school. We used to go from classroom to classroom. But they won't allow us to do that anymore. Now we have to stand out of the sidewalk. And I got a little interesting story. By the way, last year in Salem, we handed out 10,000 Bibles in the various schools and fairs. And I was at Pringle Middle School. We had this father come stomping up to us, and he handed me the Bible that I'd just given his daughter, and he called me a pedophile for having the audacity, as an old man, to give his daughter the Bible. And so he called the police. Well, we gave the policeman a Bible. Anyway, and here you can see these young people have been asked, do you want to accept the Lord? And there they are. And, oops, yeah, that's the right one. Okay. There we have when you go to a different city, you don't know where you're going, so you hire a taxi driver for that week. And this was also the security guard at the hotel they stayed at. And if you notice, the taxi driver was a Muslim. And the other guy, the security guard, was a Hindu. Well, they, at the end of the 2-week time, asked us what we were up to, and we gave them a Bible. And they accepted the Lord, both of them. Now I want to move us into China. Now I'm kind of skipping along pretty fast because I know I don't have a lot of time. But I want to talk about the China. And I think it's interesting. There's only one Gideon in all of the country of China. And the reason that he's there, and he has a PhD, his job is to make sure that the state-sponsored Bible, because you can't bring them there, you have to buy them there from the country of China. They have to make sure that that Bible is correct. Well, now, Pastor, this is going to be an interesting story for you. Here's Pastor Wang, and I won't try and pronounce his first name because I know I do it wrong. But in that country, the pastors all have to be registered. And all of the people that go to the church have to be registered. Church, building, everything. But here they are. They've accepted from the Gideons the state-sponsored Bible. All those Bibles have a seal from the government of China that says, okay, this one's okay to have. Well, if you notice then, we had distributed Bibles in 15 of the 22 provinces. Over 5 million Bibles have been distributed in China. Now you think, well, there's, close to 1.7 billion in China, so that's a lot more to do. But of late, they've been kind of closed over that. But 500,000 of those people are known to have accepted the Lord. And here you go, Pastor. Now there's a church for you. 50,000 members in that church, 10 stories, gigantic building. But the Chinese government got a little bit concerned, shall I say, because of all those people. So they blew it up, which is really a tragedy. But the church just went underground, of course. They didn't stop going to church. They just couldn't do it openly anymore. Now I want to move us to the Philippines. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about that because we just recently had a trip to the Philippines. I actually went there back in the 90s. That was kind of fun. Here, guys, showing you where it is. So the archipelago of the Philippines has some 7,500 islands, most of which are not inhabited, but some of them are. And of course, you may remember the Philippines from World War II and all of the activities associated with that. My father was actually on Corregidor when they took it back. And so that's kind of a connection there. And here, I wanted to show my friend, John Milner. He was with this group of men in this 2-week period of time at the Philippines in 2020, and then he just got back from doing it again. And one of the things I thought that was interesting about the Philippines was the president of the Philippines did a proclamation that said, hey, we think that it's really great for you to study the Word of God. So it's okay. And I thought to myself, wow, if we did that here, well, they'd impeach the guy so quick he wouldn't even know what would happen to him. Of course, it might not hurt us if we did in some cases. Anyway, so here's the basic map of the Philippines. It went to 2 different places. There's Cebu City in the south, and Manila in the north. By the way, Manila is a city of 15 million people. And they thought, well, this is a 2-week period of time. We just get with it and do it. But God has interesting plans sometimes. Because right in the middle was this volcano. And the leader of this group, Colonel Bruce Chaudhry, he said to me, I had to figure out what I was going to do, whether I was going to stop in the middle and send everybody home because the volcano was about to erupt, or we stay and try and do the work that God has sent us here to do. Well, thankfully he stayed. But, they had a lot of bad press. I mean, there's 47 different fissures in the volcano. They thought, oh my goodness sakes, things are going to get ugly. And it's such a beautiful, peaceful scene there. But things woke up. And it woke up a little more. And then finally everything got exciting. And so they decided, instead of going home, that they would work. Oops, this is the wrong place for that to be. Sorry. They decided to meet the needs, the physical needs of the people, and then as well as the spiritual needs. So they did that. They dealt with these people in tents and whatnot. It was a very great feeling to be able to work and help the people. Well, there the Bibles are. Each one of those boxes is 100. So there's a lot of Bibles there. And every morning, we get together and pray over the Bibles that we were going to distribute that day. Because as I said, handing them a book is one thing, but handing them the Word of God is a whole different thing. We want to have people read those books and find the Lord in the pages thereof. But they start before dawn. Get in that taxi, as I was saying, go around the city of Manila. Can you imagine driving around a city of 15 million people and not know where you're going? Kind of story of my life. I remember when I was first sent to Dublin, Ireland, my boss wouldn't let me get a taxi because they're expensive. So he rented me a car, gave me a map, and said, have at it. Well, I showed you a few pictures of classes, and you can't see it very well because it's kind of an eye chart at the bottom. But in this case, there were 38 students and 1 teacher that accepted the Lord by us going to them and giving them a simple gospel message, handing them a Bible, and asking who would like to accept the Lord. And here's another classroom. In this case, it's a high school classroom, and 20 students there accepted the Lord. Well, in this case, there were 8 hotels that were visited, 14 hospitals, 9 fire and police stations, 5 militaries, 9 prisons, and 487 schools. And a total of 906,320 Bibles were distributed. And we found statistically about 10% of that will accept the Lord on the spot. So that means about 90,000. But I think in practicality it's more than that. And I put this picture in there because I thought it might be interesting to know what God does sometimes. This man down in the corner, this gentleman here, He was the head of the local mafia. He's killed people, or had them killed. But God got a hold of him. And he got saved. And now, as you can see there, he is the International Director of Latin America. And he works tirelessly to help get the gospel message into the hands of all the people. And I must have picked up the wrong one, because I'm way early. But I just wanted to show you her picture, because again, this is what it's all about. This young lady. Now I can answer questions. I can tell a few more testimonies, because I got several memorized. Pastor, it just depends on you how you want to proceed, because I put in the wrong video, and so we've got several more minutes to go.
Sure. Yeah, you guys have any questions?
The Bibles you give out, are they your New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs, or are they complete Bibles now to these kids?
To the kids are primarily New Testament with
okay.
Psalms and Proverbs.
And it's always in the local language?
Yes, sir. We print them in 110 languages, and then they're on an app for your phone. You can get 2,500 languages and dialects, and many of them will read to you in that language.
Are they contemporary translations, or still King James?
Yes, no, they are ESV currently.
What is that?
The ESV is
ESV.
English Standard Version. And the reason we chose that is it is based on an 8th grade education rather than King James, which is sort of a 12th grade education and language that we no longer use. And so we chose ESV, and also because it didn't have a copyright.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. NASB is a better version in terms of literal translation, but they have a copyright. And so we didn't want to have to pay them for all that printing.
Sure.
Because we distribute close to, after COVID it's been somewhat less, I think we're up to about 48 million per year around the world. There's 256,000 Gideons around the world in 200 countries. And so we distribute about 45 million. We were up as high as 90 million, and then COVID hit and everything went down to about 24 million. Many of the hotels would take them out, and then they were beginning to put them back in.
Take them out, why?
Oh, because they were dirty in their mind, at least. The COVID people were all excited about the fact that
Oh, I see.
many people
They're
touched them.
contaminated.
Yeah, yeah. Just recently, last October, in fact, we distributed 45,000 Bibles in Portland. We went and did one of these blitzes where we went to every hotel that would allow us to, all the police stations, schools, and colleges, and we handed out Bibles. And in the hotels, of course, we put the whole Bible, but in the police stations and whatnot, we had out the Testament.
Places like Portland, do you get a pushback from any organizations or?
Oh yes, there was freedom from religion. People that were all excited about some of that, and Portland State University. Some of the men were very much afraid to go there because of the recent unrest during the 2020 presidential campaign. There was a lot of worry about that, but we did end up with 490 Bibles distributed at Portland State University. We're going to be doing University of Oregon next spring.
By contrast, what's the reaction in more conservative areas, Atlanta, Georgia, or something like that?
Well, we do a lot better in the Bible Belt.
In terms of pushback, I mean, do you?
Yeah, in terms of pushback. We still get some pushback from the school system, the public school. That's why we started doing the fairs. Because it used to be, like I said, we could go into a classroom and we could hand a Bible to everybody that wanted one. And now they won't allow us to go in the classroom. So we started doing the fairs. And like, for instance, at the state fair this year, we handed out about 4,800 Bibles.
Here in Salem.
Here in Salem, yes. And we do all the little local fairs. The Huntsville Corn Festival, for instance, we handed out 409, and we saw 32 children come to know the Lord there. And we do the Polk County, Marion County Fair. It was just a little bit frustrating to us a couple of years ago when they had to fire up the canyon. Marion County wouldn't let us go and deliver Bibles to people at the fair, and so we worked through a church in Gates. Did that.
Do you know what kind of follow-up for the kids that accept Jesus?
Well, I tell them, and well, I guess really all of us tell them that you need to go find a church, because I'm not a pastor. I'm not going to pretend to be one. And so you need a church. So oftentimes I'll work with a pastor and I'll say, hey, I'm going to recommend these people in this area to go to your church. And I try not to just proselyte them, because that's, again, it's inappropriate. But if we find somebody who really accepts the Lord and all that, we'll just say, you need to find a church that talks about what's in this book.
I worked with Child Evangelism Fellowship for 18 years after retiring, and
Oh, okay.
we always did the same, recommending the kids
Yeah.
to attend church.
Recommend to go to church, yeah.
And we also work with the local Gideons, and they will help
Yeah,
direct them
when we
to
go
the
to-
churches in the local areas.
Yeah, when we go to the Philippines, we'll work with the local Gideons. We're just there to hand out Bibles. They do most of the work, to be honest with you.
Where are you going next?
Where are we going next? Well, let me get back up here, see if I can find this slide that ended up in the wrong place. There we go. This is the ones that were slated for 2024 and a few in 2025. And that lets you know where some of the places, we go lots of places every year. We try and do one of these blitzes, as I call them, in every 6 years. Because a Bible in a hotel is about all that lasts. It's about 6 years. Because they get written on and they get messed with and they get dirty and whatnot. And so we change them out every 6 years. The good thing about that is that 2,500 people have the chance to look at that Bible during that time. And being a bunch of business and professional men, we end up quoting and living in number world way too much, I think, in some ways. But at the same time, it's still fascinating to know that we have at least potential of reaching 2,500 people. And I remember when I was traveling all over the world, and I mentioned to some of you at least, I've been to 20 countries, and that was the first thing I did whenever I'd get to my hotel, look for the Gideon Bible. And sometimes they'd be in pretty good shape, sometimes not so good shape. In Chicago once, I opened my Bible and fell on the floor 3 marijuana cigarettes, which was, I thought, kind of an interesting place to put it, but whatever.
What kind of reaction do you get in Muslim countries?
Well, you know, we get guarded reaction, I guess is the best way to say it. But at the same time, they're hungry. They believe that Jesus was a prophet. Not as quite as good as Muhammad, but he's a prophet. And so they'll listen to you. And so we talk to them, tell them about the fact that their God doesn't have a son. And that God did have a son. And he died for you. And so we show them the love. And so the only thing that's bad for them is that they can be killed because of changing. But they do. Lots and lots of people around the world.
One of the places, one of the folks that work in that area mentioned that they can give them a Bible without the cross on it, and they will take it and read it.
Yeah,
But they won't take it if the cross is on the front of the Bible.
Well, another interesting story was from the director of the Gideons in Indonesia. Indonesia is Muslim, or Islam is the state religion there. And so he went up to the headmaster of the main university, that is an Islamic university, and he led that guy to the Lord. That guy became probably one of the greatest evangelists in Indonesia because of finding the Lord.
So the cross on the front, is that because of the recognition that it would bring to other people?
I think so,
seeing
yes.
them?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And it's like we have a Catholic version too, which doesn't have the plan of salvation for that. I always think that's kind of cheeky because that's what it's all about. But we can give those to Catholics, and they'll accept it. And we're praying that they read it and find the Lord anyway. Because, as God says, He inhabits His Word. And we've seen it way too many times not to believe that.
That's interesting, the plan of salvation would offend them.
Yeah, well, because they believe that the priest in the Catholic Church holds the key to salvation. In fact, I read once where the only way you get to heaven and avert purgatory, really, is to be buddy-buddy with the priest, because he hands out a little bit of grace as you go. Which I thought to myself, well, who do you think you are?
However, it's been interesting to notice that there is a movement within the Catholic Church to go back to salvation by grace first before they can get anything else from the priest.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased to hear that that movement is coming, because God is working. He's working in the Catholic Church, He's working among the Muslims, and He works even here in Oregon. We are considered one of the least church states in the nation. And so we have missionaries, we have seen missionaries coming into this area, and I am just thrilled to see it, because God's working. He's working all the way around the world. It's just the testimonies we hear are just magnificent and wonderful to see how these
the testimonies are just amazing to me.
Yeah.
You talk about the underground churches. A friend of mine named Mugen Bunyao was a director of Gideons in Malaysia. Malaysia, too, is an Islamic state religion. And there was some Chinese fishermen that got too close to Malaysia, and they were captured and put in jail for a year because they were within the boundaries of the territorial waters of Malaysia. Well, during that time, Mugen Bunyao and his buddies went and gave them all Bibles, and of the 18, 14 came to know the Lord. And when they got out of prison, the captain of which had to be held 6 months later because he's supposed to know better. But when he got out too, he went home and started 300 underground churches in China from that one Bible. And so there's a tremendous power. It's nothing that Gideons do. It is all God.
Yeah.
We're just the hands and feet that hand out the Bible. And sometimes when we go to prison, this is another interesting story. It's a little dangerous sometimes. There was one guy who handed out Bibles in a prison in the South, actually. And this guy smacked him. Well, while he was fighting, the brother took and tucked the Bible in his coat pocket. So when he got back to his cell, still pretty angry, he threw that coat on the floor. And it clumped. He looked inside and said, well, okay, I haven't got anything else better to do, so I'll read this book. Well, he became a Christian. And so I thought, well, that guy, even though he had a momentary pain in the face, it was worth it.
It was Southern U.S.
Yeah. And so we're out there doing the work. Now, you know, we can say that, yeah, we need money because these little books now have gotten to the point where they used to be, when I started, they were $1.05. Now they're $1.80 to buy these books. But you know what's more important, folks? And most important, really, is we have your prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we have your prayers, God will make sure we get the money. I'm not worried about the money. We need prayers. We need members. When I started in the Gideons, just a few short years ago, there were 1,950 Gideons in Oregon. Now there's 800 Gideons in Oregon. And Pastor, I'm sure that you'll be aware of this, or you are aware of this, as the church membership falls off, then Gideon membership falls off. So I'm asking you here to think about whether God might want you to be a Gideon. It's a noble thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to do. But of course, it's a called thing to do. I'm not twisting arms necessarily, I'm just putting it out there. And then there's another thing I think that's very, very important to churches, is it's not just the pastor's job to to lead people to the Lord. Pastor, we have a program called Conversations, a simple method of soul winning that we give out for free. We come to your church and we do a little class for your members. Because 95% of the people seated before me today will never have the opportunity to lead someone to the Lord. And that's a shame. I'm not saying that we have to go out, everybody have to go out and be Billy Graham, because we're not. But if God brings you a person, I'll never forget this guy when I was young. I installed CB radios, and the guy said, well, I'm dying of cancer. And I was a Christian, pretty young, but in my 20s. And I couldn't think of anything to say to him other than, well, I'll pray for him. And that was a dumb thing to say. God threw him in my lap, and I didn't follow through. And so I say to you, Pastor, I'm offering this opportunity to your church if you want, if it meets your need, to come and give you a little class. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to do this class. And it's based upon 2 books, How to Share Jesus Without Fear and The Key to an Open Door. Those 2 things are embedded in this 3-hour session. And there's plenty of time to practice with your folks here. The other thing is I don't see any young people, but if there's youth things where they can give out Bibles and we can't, so we give the book of Mark in the form of what we call the life book. We pay for it ourselves, give it to the churches should they want it. And looks like I'm running out of time, Pastor. Yes, it is that time.
Yes,
It
it is.
is. So, Pastor, I want to thank you for allowing me to just jabber on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome,
The
Ernest.
congregation, it's been a pleasure as always.